More county sheriffs saying that they are not going to abide by the law passed by Democrats at the Illinois State House and enacted by Governor J.B. Pritzker that enforces a gun ban on citizens and also a gun registry. This, of course, happened earlier this month with the governor enacting that ban, and then you instantly had sheriffs across the state say they're not going to enforce it. And I think it's like 90-plus sheriffs across the state have said this, including out of DuPage County, which is the second largest county in the state of Illinois. But you've got sheriffs all across the state that are saying they're not going to enforce this. This while you have, as we covered in the last segments, a state's attorney out of McHenry County suing the state over this. So you've got county elected officials, top law enforcement officials that are not going to comply or are suing over the state's gun ban. So, of course, this is going to be very contentious as all of these different court cases get played out. You've got the federal cases that the state police are looking to consolidate. See how a separate federal case that they don't want to consolidate with might impact that trajectory. But you also have state level cases with temporary restraining orders issued in Effingham County, expecting a ruling out of White County. And now you have McHenry County state's attorney suing the state to get a temporary restraining order for the entire McHenry County population. And an emergency hearing on that case is set for Monday. But in the background of all of that, you've got sheriffs who are refusing to enforce the law. And State Representative Adam Niemerg, he held a news conference yesterday with several sheriffs and others in law enforcement. And it started off with the sheriff out of Crawford County, William Rutan. He addressed the media and said, hey, this is an unconstitutional law that he believes they should not enforce because it violates individuals' Second Amendment rights. Here is the sheriff, William Rutan, out of Crawford County.
I am a constitutional officer. I swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States first and foremost, and that me and several of the other sheriffs in the state, like most of us, and several state's attorneys, along with the Crawford County state's attorney, have sent out these letters stating that we feel this law that has recently passed is unconstitutional, and how we do not want to, or how we are not going to enforce any of that law.
So it'd be interesting to see if the Crawford County state's attorney follows suit of McHenry County's state's attorney and files a lawsuit. But you had Adam Niemerg, the state representative from Dietrich. He's also the Teutopolis area. He addressed members of the media yesterday and just laid out really the concerns that he shares a lot of these sheriffs have, and that is that this law violates individuals' Second Amendment rights in the U.S. Constitution, but not just that. He also says it's misguided because, there's this push to try to curb gun violence. And he says that this is not going to curb gun violence.
Woke, progressive states' attorneys will not prosecute acts of gun violence in their counties. They'll call it mutual combat. Yet they will prosecute honest citizens who wish to exercise their constitutional right to keep and bear arms. And make no mistake about it, this new law infringes on the rights of honest citizens. It infringes their rights by preventing them from buying firearms that are legal in nearly every other state. It selectively applies our constitutional rights to certain citizens, but denies those rights to others. The new law essentially treats the Second Amendment like a privilege rather than a right, which is what it is. In our society, we don't provide the government a list of people who attend church or who are members of the local Rotary Club because our Constitution gives us a right to freely assemble. We don't have to get permission from the government to exercise our rights because to do so would contradict the very nature of what a right is. Honest citizens are not the ones causing gun violence. Stripping honest citizens of their rights won't solve the problem. More laws are not the solution. We must address the root cause of gun violence. We must help troubled youth get the mental health care they need, And we must, as a society, elevate and promote the family as the bedrock of who we are. Let's focus on real solutions, and let's stop infringing on the rights of honest citizens. Folks, our Second Amendment is not subject to a governor's political narrative or presidential aspirations.
So we're hearing from the news conference yesterday down in the southern Illinois area with State Representative Adam Niemerg, who you just heard there, standing alongside several county sheriffs and other deputies from law enforcement and so on. And another sheriff was heard yesterday after being asked some questions. This is the Jasper County Sheriff, Brandon Francis. He laid out his concerns and how he's not afraid. He said he's not afraid to not enforce this. And the question was really about, Governor J.B. Pritzker saying, hey, if you don't enforce this as a law enforcement officer, then you shouldn't be in your job. But Jasper County Sheriff says he's not really too concerned about what, Governor J.B. Pritzker has to say. He has an oath of office that is about the Constitution and individuals' rights under that Constitution. Again, here's Jasper County Sheriff Brandon Francis.
Obviously, there's discretion in which law that we enforce, but a law that would be a violation of our constitutional rights is something that we would not enforce. I mean, that's, we don't commonly see that, but in this case, it's happened. So
This is obviously...
So he says that in this case it has happened, that there's an unconstitutional law. They believe it's unconstitutional, and he's not going to enforce it, as a bunch of sheriffs across the state have also indicated they're not going to enforce it. And it was asked, if the courts do say that this is constitutional, will you enforce it then? He didn't necessarily directly answer that question, but again, to the issue of it's repugnant. If anything's repugnant to the Constitution, then it should not be enforced. And we talked about this briefly a couple of days ago about the idea of not just upholding citizens' rights under the Constitution, but also the idea of the possibility that if a sheriff or a state's attorney is to prosecute an unconstitutional law and prosecute somebody for violation of that unconstitutional law, that individual who's prosecuted could then sue, and then you've got taxpayer liability out the wazoo to make up for not just defending the actions, but also possible payouts because of infringement of constitutional rights. So there's also a fiduciary responsibility that counties have in not enforcing unconstitutional laws, according to some arguments. All right, so just to preface that. Let's get a few reactions here at 217-629-7970. Good morning, you're on WMAY.
Greg, 2 quick points. One, when you say Teutopolis, you have to mention the greatest Illinois school mascot, the wooden shoes.
Are they from Denmark or something? Is that a pretty, Danish
They've
heavy?
been the wooden shoes, and I know first school in state history to win the boys and girls basketball championship in the same year.
Look at you! What is this?
And for some reason,
is there some like Illinois Trivial Pursuit that you're writing or something?
Everyone is so tall down there. I don't know why.
Okay,
but it's a thing. Anyway, Champaign County, he supports it. Does that have anything to do, not being a conspiracy, but does that have anything to do with, the University of Illinois?
Champaign County supports it. Cook County supports it. There were questions about St. Clair County.
You might want to fall in line, buddy.
Say again?
Was there any, you might want to fall in line because, boy, I'd hate to see that funding lapse a little bit.
It's an interesting question. Again, I'll let you theorize on that.
He's the only one. Thanks, Greg.
I'll let you theorize. I appreciate it. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning. Do you think there's any, what's the I'd like to know what you think the difference is between all these sheriffs willing to stand up and say no to this new law as opposed to administrators in schools across Illinois not standing up to a mandate from the governor regarding COVID policies.
Is there a relation there? Rephrase that. I'm not sure I follow.
So what would make them, this is an actual law that was passed as opposed to just a mandate by the governor, and that really couldn't be
right, so we've been talking this hour about all of the various movements of lawsuits. You've got the state police that have filed to consolidate 3 federal cases into a 4th federal case that was actually moved from Crawford County state level to federal level in the Southern District of Illinois. That judge in the federal courts appointed by Obama has some people concerned about the trajectory of this, but the bottom line is that they're seeking a temporary restraining order statewide while this moves through the courts. And you've got the questions of, is this really going to be dealt with before October 1st, which is the opening of the window for people to register their semi-automatic weapons with Illinois State Police. But you also have the first state's attorney that filed a lawsuit in McHenry County against the state. And that is a preliminary hearing heard on Monday, so we'll cover that for you as well, and that coming from McHenry County again. But again, also sheriffs across the state saying that they're not going to enforce an unconstitutional law. Your thoughts on this? Thanks for your patience. Good morning. You're on WMAY. What's up?
Hey there. So I've been following you for a little bit ever since the law passed. I just had a couple points to make, if it's all right.
Please. You got about a minute and a half, though.
Okay, I'll make it quick then. So looking back at past laws, 1986, they passed the Hughes Amendment banning switches, fully automatic firearms from general possession and manufacture. So that's already been banned for the last almost 40 years. They did this through an emergency session with a bunch of people, including Jim Durkin, who were in their lame duck session there was no repercussions. And they could do this where no one could respond. The citizenry could not vote these people out because they were retiring. So there was no reprisal, I guess. So,
and a lot of Democrats who I approached in the Senate that voted against it or didn't vote for it, they wouldn't tell me why they didn't vote for it, and apparently they're in blended districts. You got about 30 more seconds. Go ahead.
Exactly, sir. And then, let's look at nationally. California. California has the most stringent gun laws in the United States at the current moment, and they still can't stop this stuff. Right. So it's like, are you going to sit there and tell me, not you, sir, but you're going to sit there and tell me as an elected official that this stuff is actually going to keep people safe? And as a gun owner, it's not going to keep people safe. During 2000, the Columbine shooting happened in the middle of the national assault weapons ban.
Yeah, and I appreciate the call. We are up against a hard break. We'll talk more about this in the future for sure. Appreciate it. 7 o'clock.
From the Fly SPI Studios.